Why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong. Wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? And what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dream, all of us ponder its spell. We know that it's probably magic. Have you been happy? And have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sun? Voice that be one and the same. I've heard it many times too quick. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La la la, la la la.
Good afternoon. Kermit the Frog is a hard act to follow. Welcome to this remembrance and celebration of life for Ruth Tucker. Thank you all for being here and for those of you joining us online. I am Reverend Brian Ferguson. I am the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Redwood City, and Ruth's wife, Cindy, is a long-time member here. A tradition within Unitarian Universalism is to begin a service by lighting a chalice, which is a symbol of our faith, a symbol of our community connection and the divine spark that exists within each one of us. I would like to invite Sho, Ruth's daughter-in-law, and I'd like to invite Mutassim, her daughter's fiance, up to light the chalice. Thank you. Our chalice lighting words come from the Reverend Laurie Gorgas Halban. Birth is a miracle of love and courage, bringing light into this world. Death is a loss of that light, but no less an act of courage. From we are born from and return to the mystery. While I believe that Ruth's wish may be for this to be a celebration of her life, we acknowledge that the passing of a family member and friend stirs great feelings of loss and sadness in each of us. All of our emotions are welcome here today. Ruth was always honest and authentic. She would want to be likewise. To be here on this important day, we all had many plans to make to allow us to be fully present here, especially those of us who've traveled from afar. Let us take a moment to be thankful for all the people that allow us to be fully present at this important and sacred moment as we celebrate the life of Ruth Tucker. A world is a place of great joy and potential. It can also be a place of great hardship and suffering. Let's take a moment in our compassion to think of those throughout our world who are living hardship, living lives of hardship at this time. May they find hope, comfort, and peace in their life soon. Please join me in a moment of silence. I now invite you to look at the people around you. Some of them may be family that you know very well. Some of them may be friends who you've known all your life and perhaps know a little too well. Some of them may appear to be strangers, but there's really no strangers here today because we are all connected through our relationship to Ruth Tucker. She weaved a merry course in her life, connecting so many people. And this gathering here, both in person and online, is reflection of that weave. Today we acknowledge and honor the passing of Ruth's life and celebrate the life she shared with us. A life which was joyful, loving, honest, and authentic. And even during this last year, as she struggled severely with breast cancer. We appreciate and celebrate the life she shared with us during this time. And as we do so, we acknowledge the complex myriad of emotions of sadness, confusion, and disappointment in the absence in all our lives now. These difficult emotions can be intermingled with feelings of joy, feelings of warmth, laughter, and connection as we bring forth the many happier memories we have of Ruth. Let us be open to all these emotions, tears of sadness and tears of joy, memories of absence and memories of deep connection with Ruth. And while we wish this to celebrate her life today, we acknowledge that the passing of a family member and friend stirs difficult, painful emotions within all of us, especially as we recall her struggles over the last year. Try as we do to make sense of death, it seems to stay just beyond our understanding and remains a mystery for so many of us who are left behind. And while each of us has our own grief in relation to Ruth, we also have a shared grief as a community close to Ruth. The depth of our grief is an expression of the deep love we had for her, an appreciation for something that is no longer with us, Ruth's presence in our life. I offer these words of Reverend Patrick Sheldon to hold us all in love at this time. In this hour of holy stillness, we gather to honor the life and the person we love. In this hour of holy stillness, we remind ourselves that the flames of life and love are never fully extinguished. In this hour of holy stillness, we offer ourselves for sharing the weight of one another's grief. In this hour of holy stillness, we offer the strength of our love to help others survive their pain and grief. In this hour of holy stillness, we call forth from each of us the power we offer out of life, out of loss, and out of love. Those are the words of Patricia Sheldon. Today, at this time, in this space, we're here to remember and celebrate Ruth's life and what her meaning meant to each of us. We celebrate the beautiful, loving, joyful, inspiring soul Ruth was. We're here to remember Ruth as a loving mother, a joyful spirit, a person who enjoyed life, a faithful supporter of others, an engineer, a mechanical tinkerer, a talented woodcrafter, a lover of games, an avid golfer, an incredible source of support for kindness of others, and for those who just appreciated having Ruth as a companion on the road of life. May the cherished and intimate memories of Ruth give us strength for the time ahead as we experience her absence in our lives. May Ruth's example inspire us to live life fully, honestly, authentically, passionately, lovingly, and more joyously. She was a person who embraced life and immensely enjoyed life despite its struggles and challenges. And I feel she would want us to embrace and enjoy our memories of her. So amidst the understandable sadness, remember the joy Ruth brought into this world with her pranks, her jokes. Remember her as a loving parent, a supportive friend, a passionate game player, a lover of the outdoors, and a huge spirit of generosity she had in giving to others. She enriched the world we live in and enriched the people who knew her. She was a person that said a big yes to life. Thank you for the blessing that was the life of Ruth Tucker. I will now light a candle in recognition of the passing of Ruth's life. I'd like to invite Tim Herzig up for the first reading.
Hello. This is called The Love Letter from the Afterlife by Andrea Gibson. Dying is the opposite of leaving. When I left my body, I did not go away. That portal of light was not a portal to elsewhere, but a portal to here. I am more here than I ever was before. I am more with you than I ever could have imagined. So close, you look past me when wondering where I am. It's okay. I know that to be human is to be farsighted. Sorry. But feel me now, walking in the chambers of your heart, pressing my palms to the soft walls of reliving. Why did no one tell us that to die is to be reincarnated in those we love while we are still alive?
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer, meditation, and reflection. Spirit of life and love, Spirit of this community gathered here, we turn our minds and hearts towards one another as we bring into a circle of concern our memories of Ruth Tucker. Help us to remember Ruth in the fullness of the unique and special spirit which she was and which she remains to us at this time. We are grateful for the blessing of Ruth in our lives and recognize through our connection to youth we are connected to each person here in a profound and sacred way. May we be inspired by Ruth's example of living life fully, lovingly, and actively, which she showed throughout her life. And we think of the strength and courage she showed over the last year of her life as her health declined. We grieve Ruth's loss in our lives, and we struggle to fully comprehend her absence. We have missed her since her passing, and we know in the time ahead her absence will continue to loom large for many of us. During these times of profound loss, may we find comfort in the good memories we have of Ruth. And when our pain is too great to bear alone, may we reach out to others, including those in this room, when we need it. We are here to care and support for one another. We pray that each of us finds the strength and comfort we need. Ruth was a special person who lived her life fully with fun and a generous spirit. May we show that generosity of spirit in our own lives today and the days, weeks, and months ahead. Let us savor the great blessing Ruth was in our lives. And may that blessing grow as we bring her spirit and memory closer, enriching our lives through her example. Our consciousness gives us the power to remember the good times and the struggles, the fullness of Ruth as a person, and the small, intimate moments of connection that can mean so much. So long as we live, Ruth too shall live, for she is now a part of us whenever we remember her. Let today be a recognition and celebration of Ruth's life and all the goodness, kindness, and passion. Let us remember the joy, the friendship, and the uniqueness she brought into each of her relationships with those of us. Let us remember all the memories we have of Ruth and help us to be open to the remembrances of others that we will hear today. And above all, let us be grateful for the gift Ruth was and continues to be to each of us here. Please join me in a time of silent reflection.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? Because I knew you. I have been changed for good.
It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now, whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a sea drop by sky bird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you,
Because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
like a comet pulled from orbit
As it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. And because I knew you,
because I knew you.
because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
I want to invite anyone who wishes to, they can come forward at any time to light candles of remembrance and comfort at either side of the sanctuary. So please feel free to come forward at any time. It is said we really die twice. Once when our physical body ceases to function and life passes from it. Our second death is when people stop telling our story. We are here today to acknowledge and honor the passing of Ruth Tucker's life and celebrate the life she shared with us. We'll do this by beginning the cycle of telling her story. This community of Ruth's family and friends hope that we can continue the cycle by telling our own unique stories of Ruth in the days, weeks, years to come. And knowing Ruth, we suspect there's some good stories out there. Candle I lit during my opening words marks the passing of Ruth's life. I now light a second candle to mark the telling of her story, her second life, as it were. Let us begin by telling Ruth's story and what she meant to each of us. Ruth Tucker was born in Dearborn, Michigan in 1955. Her parents, Gerald Otis Tucker and Edith Mary Tucker, raised their 7 children in a very loving and religious household. Ruth was the youngest. She had 2 sisters, Mary and Carol, and 4 brothers, James, Phil, Robert, Bruce, and Tommy. Sadly, Tommy died when he was 10 years old. When Ruth was 3 years old, the family loaded up the VW van and moved to Hayward in San Francisco Bay Area. In 1958, a large Midwestern family, a VW van, traveling to San Francisco. Sounds like the makings of the great American novel. Ruth's mother, Edith Mary, described her as Ruth described her as a very capable, strong-minded, and had a very close relationship with her when she was young, and was very attentive to youth, even with 6 other siblings to take care of. Her dad grew up a farmer and later worked primarily in photo engraving. He was described as someone who could fix anything, and a keen woodworker, both areas of passion and accomplishment for Ruth throughout her life. She would tinker in cars, home improvement projects, woodworking, understanding how various things worked. Her engineering curiosity seemed to develop at an early age. Ruth was described to me by many as being very honest, yet I want to dispel that. So let's complicate it a little. What else are eulogies for? When she played with her brother Bruce at Strategio, she knew her brother always chose the red tiles, so she wrote the numbers on the back of them that only she could see, giving her a big advantage in the game. Oh, Ruth, your secret's out now. Now, while there might be some minor doubts about childhood youth's honesty, her generosity, kindness, and entrepreneurship were obvious. She started her own business of sort, a candy bank. She noticed that many of the children at her school could not afford candy in the vending machine because it was too expensive. So she would buy large bags of candy at the store, then sell small pieces and portions to the children at a very small profit. She had a bank and a notebook. She kept track of the candy she loaned to children. Don't think you can loan candy to children. This project was driven by kindness and generosity rather than any great hope for money she was going to earn. Ruth attended the San Lorenzo High School, where she was a very good student and remembered for her gorgeous, long, curly, light brown hair in ringlets. She had good friends who describe her as being kind, gentle, and incredibly talented in many ways. A good trumpet player, a good athlete, especially the shot put and discus. There are also many stories of her TPing houses as a teenager, including her orchestra teacher's house and fellow students' houses. But I'm sure there was only people who deserved it, since they had been specially selected. After graduating high school, Ruth went to Oregon to live with her brother James. She qualified and worked as a respiratory therapist, which was what she was very good at. And she also had some fun. She particularly liked working nights because of the camaraderie with her colleagues, the more relaxed pace of work because many of the patients were sleeping, and there was less supervision. This also gave rise to Ruth's jokester side as an adult. One of her main jobs as a respiratory therapist was to suction out people's mouths. And one time she got a plate of Brussels sprouts from the cafeteria, and unknown to one of her colleagues, she placed these in the receptacle for the suction came out. This caused great consternation to said colleagues that these Brussels sprouts may have been suctioned out. It also created much amusement to Ruth's colleagues, and I'm sure Ruth. After a few years of working as a respiratory therapist, she resigned, telling a friend that she was fed up asking people to spit. She may have been scared what was going to come out after her siphoning prank. Ruth's next career step was to begin an electrical engineering program at the University of California in Berkeley. This was in 1981. She was one of the few women in the program at the time, and was often the only woman in many of her classes. She was a pioneer in this, and like so many things in her life, she rose to the challenge. It was in one of her classes where she met a teaching assistant and graduate student named Peter Byrne. Peter remembers Ruth being very practical, honest, and forthright, while not really wanting any help and guidance from him as a teaching assistant. She was an older graduate student, and she seemed to know what she needed. Shortly after this class finished, Ruth and Peter began dating, a relationship that flourished during their time at Berkeley, and in 1985, they were married. Ruth graduated with a bachelor's in electrical engineering, her primary focus being in computer programming. Upon graduation, she worked for Xerox PARC. She again was one of the few women working in a predominantly male environment, but she was undaunted, even wearing a t-shirt that said, "The best man for a job is a woman." She received a terse letter from Xerox management asking her not to wear it. Oh, boo, Xerox. Ruth was a pioneer working in the engineering field in the 1980s. Peter started his own company, focusing on fault detection in semiconductors, and Ruth joined him in writing code for the company. Peter describes their working relationship as strong and more of a collaboration than a simple employee. Ruth worked for this company after their first son, Brendan, was born in 1989. Often the three of them would travel, including abroad to Ireland, with the young Brendan pulled along with his two parents. Traveling to foreign countries was a lifelong love of Ruth's, and she was organized, fun, and an adventurous traveling companion, open and flexible to the unfolding adventures of foreign travel. When Meg was born in 1993, Ruth became a full-time parent to the children. Ruth as a mother was described as very flexible and always encouraging, even with mistakes. An example of Ruth's parental flexibility is at Christmas time, she'd often take Brendan and Meg out of school and take the train up to San Francisco, go to Union Square to see the Christmas tree and lights. One time there was a cat adoption in Macy's, and Ruth felt safe with that because he thought, we're not bringing a cat home. But unknown to Ruth, there was one dog there. Guess which came home with them? They fell in love with this dog, Reuben, and it came home that day. Ruth always loved dogs and has had many dogs throughout her life. Ruth loved the outdoors with camping and hiking. the outdoor life being an important part of family life for Ruth, Brendan, and Meg. Meg remembers staying in a cabin in Lake Tahoe when they heard the pounding on the door, but thought it might just be a drunk from the local bar. Then they heard scratching, and then the window opened with a bear trying to get in. Ruth was never one to shirk a challenge, screamed loudly, "Hey!" and the bear fell back out the window. Ruth out mama beared a mama bear. She was quite a woman. Ruth, while often a person of action, was always also very thoughtful, intelligent, and a very good listener. Both Brendan and Meg remember always feeling safe to tell their mother anything and safe from being judged by her. Ruth was a person who did many things well and could still laugh at those things which may not have been her strength. Brendan remembers his mother loved to dance and did so with a lot of energy, but not a lot of rhythm. But they both remember a lot of fun and laughter at the mother-son dance at his wedding last summer, a year past summer. In the late 1990s, Ruth began to recognize her identity as a lesbian, which understandably was difficult for her husband Peter and resulted them in making the difficult decision to get divorced. This was difficult for her family and difficult for her children of 9 and 6 years old to comprehend. Ruth's mother and family of origin also struggled with her coming out. Ruth at that time did not know any openly lesbians, but in time found a wonderful and supportive community. And part of that community was Cindy Williamson, who she met online in 2001. They had a first meeting which seemed to go well, so well they planned 3 follow-up dates. That's quite a commitment. Cindy said the first one was sushi, and you've got to respect anyone that has raw fish in the first date. A courageous choice. The next day, Cindy recalls having some second thoughts, remembering Ruth being a bit full of herself. But they'd arranged this third date. Fortunately, Cindy was a patient and showed up, and the next 2 dates at the Rainbow Girls Chorus and the Stanford Women's Basketball cemented their relationship. I suspect the shared love of food, music, and sport sealed the deal. In 2005, they were married and shared a life of love, friends, sports, especially Stanford Women's Cardinals basketball, dogs, and laughter. Cindy says they had a wonderful relationship and remembers Ruth being kind, having an easy ability to talk to anyone, a wonderful sense of fun, and enjoyed being the center of attention in a very good way, she assured me. Their home was a place of love, laughter, games, friends, and of course, dogs. They both loved dogs. They shared many interests together and also had separate passions. Ruth had woodworking, Cindy had quilting. They loved traveling and did many trips together to Japan, Egypt, France, and the Netherlands, amongst others. They also shared that passion that grounds many good relationships, sharing laughter at inappropriate things. Ruth would work hard at relationships and try to fix them where possible. She was never one to hold a grudge, hold on to anger, or stay. Retirement, Ruth stayed busy and active with various projects and activities. Her volunteering at Sequoia Village to help elders with technology support, which combined 3 of her great passions: helping people, fixing problems, and technology. She also was of great support to many of her own family members with her generosity, including taking care of her own mother towards the end of her life. Ruth had always been an athletic, active person in sports and hiking. She was conscientious about her health. Therefore, it was a surprise to many when she was diagnosed with breast cancer in spring 2022. At the time, her treatment seemed successful, but she acknowledged that cancer is sneaky. In September last year, Ruth went to ER due to a shortage of breath, and tests revealed a serious recurrence of a cancer. Ruth acknowledged, this is not good, is it? Throughout this last year, as she struggled with the spread of her cancer and the side effects of treatment, she faced the circumstances with, as you'd expect, courage, strength, and practicality. There were definitely moments when she was emotionally down, but often was the first to gather the emotional strength to look forward. She consistently would get to a place of hope after bad test results got her down. But she understood the serious reality of how she was living, yet would find a positive outlook to move forward. Ruth and Cindy would take small local trips when Ruth was over the worst of the side effects of chemo. Ruth stayed as active as she could. She was very appreciative of the medical staff who cared for her, often saying, I don't want to be a bother. She found comfort and hope where she could. One of the most profound moments towards the end of Ruth's life was getting to meet her first grandchild, Ava Ruth, Brendan and Shaw's daughter. Ava Ruth was born a week before Ruth passed on October 30th, and here is a photo of them together. The end of a wonderfully rich and vibrant life, together with the rich potential of new life. Ruth really was a special person, a spouse, a good friend, a great friend, a loving parent, a pioneer, a fixer, a tinkerer, a doer, a mischievous prankster, a joyful spirit, and truly a Renaissance woman in many ways. We miss her. We will miss her. She has taken a little piece of our hearts with her, and she has left a big piece of her heart with all of us. For that, we are grateful. To finish this eulogy, I would like to share the words of Ken Collier. I do not know where we go when we die, and I do not know what the soul is, or what death is, or when, or why. What I know is the song once sung cannot be unsung. The life once lived cannot be unlived, and the love once loved cannot be unloved.
No, delete. It's a day for tears. That's okay. I wanted to say this in our somewhat shared language, although it's a little messed up. Uh, Even though you know one day it's gonna shine on her own, he will be her protector. You first saw her face in her father's gaze. He will be her protector. There's a long hands carrying her name. Oh, they will be her protector. And even though you know one day she's gonna shine on her own, you will be her projector. You will be her protector. Okay, now you can open it. Yes, what? Oh, that's all. Tissue. Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay. Only one vocal cord is working well.
Maybe they've had enough of me. The communal eulogy is a time for family and friends to share memories and stories for Ruth. And think about her effect on each of our lives. We invite everyone who would wish to come forward to the podium and use the microphone so all can hear and those online can see you. If you have accessibility concerns, I have a handheld mic. I can bring you to where you're seated if it's too difficult to get up here. I'd like to invite Meg Byrne up to speak first.
Okay. My mom will always be with me, but it is impossible to measure the size or depth of her absence. I've never done life without her beside me. Some of my favorite childhood memories are exploring the outdoors with her and our karaoke, my favorites being our duet of California Dreamin' and Melissa Etheridge in the car loudly with the windows down. After I left home for college and then medical training, we spoke on the phone almost every day. They were completely unfiltered conversations about whatever was on our minds that ended with I love you. She always made the time to listen to my problems. I will especially miss texting each other moon alerts, which meant to get outside stat to admire a beautiful moon. We had some amazing adventures together, especially to Dearborn, Michigan, where I pushed her in a swing in the park she played in as a toddler. And when we road tripped down Highway 1 and started a tradition of drinking red wine and eating popcorn together. When we got the news that the breast cancer we thought had been caught and removed early had secretly and widely metastasized, I was so angry. I was so angry that she was being taken early when she was so strong and powerful, and we have so much more to share. But my mom never once reacted this way. The night we got the news, we took a lap together of the hospital unit, and she looked at me and just asked, "So is it bad?" And when I said yes, she just nodded. When we got home from the hospital, she just said that she was so happy with the life she had built and all of the experiences that she got to have. She truly felt she lived life well. Not once during grueling treatments did she express, "Why me?" My mom was a person who lived with intention and joy, refused to dwell on the negative, and loved openly. We're sure that she has been busy in heaven. She's probably already fixed a leak, reduced the monthly phone bill, got the hummingbird feeder going, configured some shelves, and sped up the Wi-Fi. We will learn to make do down here. And thank you all for being here today to celebrate her life.
My mom always liked a particular set of lyrics that she lightly paraphrased as work like you don't need the money, dance like nobody's watching, love like you've never been hurt. Not only did she frequently quote them, but she also lived by them, as many people in this room can attest, both figuratively and quite literally in the dancing sense. Mom was someone who always shone in her own way, through her kindness, spontaneity, and love of life. Mom often said if she was going to go back to work, she wanted to go to a mom and pop hardware store so that she could talk about tools and home improvement with people in a low pressure environment. Instead of that, she threw herself at her volunteer work and helping family and friends with tech support and home projects. She would spend hours tinkering with old computers and researching solutions to the problems people would bring to her, taking calls from everyone with a smile on her face. She worked, but didn't expect money, and gave back to the communities she was part of. It was borderline impossible to get Mom very mad, and she was very quick to forgive on the rare occasion that she did. Mom was always up for a walk or to accompany someone to an interesting event, and she took a keen interest in anything Meg and I were up to, even if it was well outside her usual pursuits. She cared deeply for Cindy and spent a lot of her time in this last year preparing and cleaning out their house to make life easier after she passed. In short, she loved deeply and consistently, without worry for how others may receive it, as though there were nothing to ever worry about with showing love. You might be able to predict what this last part is about, and it's the one that's both figurative and literal. Mom danced to the beat of her own drum. From her career choices, to her interests, to the way she came out, she was never too concerned with what others might think, and she always did it in her own style. She was also always ready to get on the dance floor, no matter what the music was, or who else was out there grooving with her. As I reflect back on the life we had together, the moment I want to keep most in my heart is us dancing at my wedding. We actually took a lesson or two, but as soon as we got out there, we both had 2 left feet and all of our steps were forgotten. So we winged it and laughed with each other the whole time as we made up our own routine, dancing like nobody was watching.
I am lucky that I spent almost 24 years of my life loving Ruth. The last year was definitely hard because of her metastatic breast cancer diagnosis. In true Ruth fashion, she was practical and focusing on what it was that we could do. We depended on the doctors to do everything they could. Early in her cancer treatment, one of Ruth's vocal cords was paralyzed. The worst thing about her diminished voice was that she couldn't sing with any volume. Fortunately, the doctor gave Ruth an injection through her throat and plumped up her vocal cords so that her voice was closer to normal. I loved hearing her sing again, especially her made-up lyrics to well-known songs. We also looked at what the two of us could do. We took little trips to ocean towns like Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz. Those trips gave us a chance to distance ourselves from lab tests, doctor appointments, and treatments. We got to slow down and pay attention to everything around us. We looked out at the bay from our hotel room. We enjoyed a movie at an old theater. Ruth got a library card from another county, and we walked in nature. Ruth acted on what was important to her. She spent time online, on the phone, and in person with so many people. Ruth thought there was nothing better than talking with people. We had a small gathering for her 70th birthday, and that night was everything that she could want. Great food and even better conversation. She loved to be the center of attention in a good way. And that night was magical. Thank you to everyone for supporting Ruth and all the family. In so many ways, we felt your love.
I'd like to invite Patrice Kalaji up for.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I have the privilege of calling Ruth my best friend. My journey with the gift Ruth began many, many years ago. It was an extraordinary journey. You've heard many of the words used to describe Ruth, her kindness, her humor, so much humor. Also that there wasn't a power tool she couldn't master, of course. She was mischievous, and Ruth would lead her band of merry women to TPing houses well into her 40s. So I'm not sure why we were doing that, but we would do that. Um, I love looking out here and seeing a lot of people wearing the color blue because it was Ruth's favorite color, and it leads me to a story. Ruth would come into our house with power tools all the time. It didn't matter. Cindy and Ruth were invited over, and Ruth just naturally brought her tools with her. And she'd fix things or add electronic gadgets I didn't even know she needed, but her goal was to make everything easier for us. Now, when Ruth and I met so many years ago, we claimed to be the only two lesbians in Belmont. We were apparently off by a couple of thousand, but to point that out, Ruth gave me the greatest gift of my life, and she gave me many gifts, but it was introducing me to my love of my life, Sue, who happened to live around the corner from Ruth. So at least there were three lesbians. So the story I want to share, it happened years ago. I needed a desk, so I dragged Ruth to IKEA, where we kind of picked out a little bit of an elaborate desk, and she helped me drag the boxes, plural boxes, home. And Cindy and Ruth had something to do that night, so I decided I was going to assemble it. So what could go wrong, Well, I knew Ruth and Cindy knew something was going wrong. So it's 3 hours later, I just get a phone call. How's it going? And I'm pretty confident I said, great, no problem, everything's fine. But what they heard was a bunch of swear words, and the desk was going back. So they show up at my door. What I didn't know is they were at a semi-formal event, and Ruth was wearing a bright blue sequenced above the knee dress, nylons, heels, makeup with blue eyeshadow, and her hair done really nicely. And I believe I was stunned because she just rushed by me, saying, yeah, and heels clicking down the hallway. And when I looked at Cindy, Cindy had that only Cindy smile, and she shrugged her shoulders, walked in, and shut the door. By the time we walked into the office, Cindy and I were so helpful. We were just making jokes and laughing hysterically. Ruth had already crawled under the wobbly desk, unscrewing screws apparently I had put in wrong, dress and all. And being the good friend I am, I went and got my camera. And so I took pictures of this, and Ruth actually did pose for me. I was going to blow it up and bring it with us, but I think you can use your imagination there. If the term viral didn't exist at that time, she would have been an influencer for sure if I had posted this. Now, I'm glad you got to hear the song from Wicked. That just fits Ruth to a key. So if you can, please download it. I had the opportunity to share my thoughts on that song with Ruth over the past year. We all are a little brighter because of Ruth, definitely braver. And even some of us are probably a little bit more in tune. Yeah, the gift of Ruth will always remain a hand upon my heart. And knowing Ruth, she'll probably loosen or tighten some screws while it's there. Thank you.
I'd like to invite anyone who wants to at this time to come forward to speak. And if you can't make it to the pulpit, raise your hand and I can bring a microphone to you. So feel free to come forward at this time.
Hi, I'm Alice Tucker, and my claim to fame today is that I'm Ruth's first and oldest sister-in-law. I was going to say that I am her best-looking sister-in-law, but then Claudia came in with a cane, so I defer to her good looks and just remain the first and the oldest. Edith Tucker, Ruth's mother, loved old wives' tales. And we recently had our first great grandbaby delivered. And during that pregnancy, I learned that old wives' tales are alive and well with the new generation. But Mom clung tenaciously to old wives' tales and tried desperately to pass them on to me and my sisters in law as we were having our babies. But there was one old wives' tale that Ruth, in typical Ruth fashion, ripped from her hands and destroyed at the moment of her birth. You see, back in the day, it was a well-known fact that a woman's ovary, one was for girls and the other was for boys. And Mom was living proof of that. She had Mary, and 3 years later, she had Carol, excuse me. And then 4 years later, having had an ovary removed, she had Jim, my husband. So clearly they took out the girl ovary. And she delivered 4 boys in rapid succession. There was Jim, and then Tommy, and then Phil, and then Bruce. And when she was pregnant with her next baby, of course it would be a boy. She didn't have a girl ovary left. But alas, out came Ruth. And that ended that old wives' tale. Mary and Carol were thrilled beyond measure to have a baby sister after all those brothers. And so they dressed her in pink, her least favorite color, ribbons, bows, lace, and she was a real live doll baby. But it didn't take long for her to assert her independence and assure them that she would have nothing to do with all that nonsense. She was, after all, a card-carrying tomboy. She was highly competitive with her brothers, whom she adored, but her mantra always was, anything you can do, I can do better. And indeed, she could. When some of the boys took up karate, she took up karate and did her best to best them. When they reached that magical age where they were getting driver's licenses, the boys each bought older cars and tenaciously repaired them and began driving them around. But because anything they could do, she could do better, she bought a flatbed pickup truck. And it was old and decrepit, but she worked on that and she got that up and running. And she drove that around. And that was Ruth. Well, there was one exception to the I'm a tomboy mantra. And that was when her 2 older sisters, who did a lot of babysitting, and they were actually teen models. They saved their hard-earned money. They went into town and they bought custom-made face powder. Back in the day, a face powder came in a little round container and it had a powder puff. And you applied it to your face with the powder puff. And this was a great thing. And the girls were so thrilled with their new look. It was very important to them. But alas, one day, little Ruth, who I think, as the legend goes, was around 3, got into their bedroom while they were at school. And she got up on the dressing table chair, and she began applying powder to her face, custom made, expensive powder. And she got it all over her face and her arms and all over the desk. And then the girls came home from school and they were furious. How dare she get into their wonderful powder and destroy all of it like that? They were really mad at her. But you couldn't stay mad at Ruth for long, and soon the anger turned to laughter, and then they called her Powder Puff. And it quickly degenerated to Puff. And that was her name for a lot of years. When she was 12 and I was 21, Jim took me home to meet the family. And Ruth was thrilled that her big brother was bringing a girlfriend home. And I was from Portland, Oregon, and that was very exotic for some reason. And being the only girl still at home, I got to sleep in her bedroom with her. Now, she had this little tiny bedroom. It was big enough for a bunk bed. There was a little tiny desk and a chair and a small dresser, and that was it. You could practically touch the walls going like this. And so she slept up on the top bunk, and I got the bottom bunk. And no matter how late Jim and I said goodnight and I went in the room to go to bed, she was waiting for me. She was just eager to get to talk to this older woman that was dating her brother. And she was full of questions. But one night early on, she said to me, Alice, you have to promise me that your children will call me Auntie Puff. Well, he was just my boyfriend. And I couldn't make that promise. But she wouldn't let me off the hook. And she was persistent. And I had to promise her that my children would call her Annie Puff. So reluctantly, I said to her, okay, my children, and parenthetically in my heart, whoever their father is, will call you Auntie Puff. Her problem was that her big sister, Mary, had brought Gerald and Don Joy out from Dearborn, Michigan to visit the family. And Mary insisted that her niece and nephew called her Aunt Ruthie. What a disgrace. Nobody called her Ruthie or Ruth. Even the neighbor boy called her Puff. So she wanted none of that. And therefore, I had to promise her that my children would call her Auntie Puff. So some years later, I did marry her brother, and she wore pink to my wedding. I'm sorry, Ruth. When she graduated from high school, she came to live with us. And my children called her Annie Puff, and they adored her, and she adored them to the very end. And one of my children is here with us today, with his wife and one of my granddaughters. Some years later, our oldest grandchild was getting married, and she showed up at our house and she said, Grandma, I want you to go over the guest list and make sure I haven't forgotten anyone. So I'm reading her list, and I said, what about Annie Puff? And she said, who? And I said, Annie Puff. And she said, who's that? And I said, you know, Aunt Ruth. And she said, why do you call her Annie Puff? And I said, I want you to go home and ask your dad who Annie Puff is, and then tell me what he had to say. Well, we miss Annie Puff. And I can't live long enough to stop missing Annie Puff. She'll be with us in our hearts forever. Thank you.
My right hand decided not a good time to walk up. That's fine. Thank you. Go ahead. All right. Thank you all for coming. I have a little different story. When Brendan was about 4 years old, he was playing soccer. And my wife Claudia and I showed up at the soccer game, and we're visiting with some of the coaches and the relatives and stuff. And Brendan was not too interested in the game, but he was waving at us as he ran up and down the field instead of paying attention to where the ball was. Fine, he's like 4. But his father, Peter, and of course, my sister, Ruth, began education at a very early age because that was very important to him. So they knew how to read, but they didn't know exactly all the vowels and the syllables and everything about it. So Brendan came running up, kind of took his arms, went around all of us and told everybody, his coaches and his friends, these are my relatives. And that stuck with me till this day. Because all of us are relatives. All of you, all of us. So then my story goes on to my second favorite person, Megan. When she was a small child baby, Ruth did a lot of traveling for business and so on. So she had a baby, Bjorn, I think you called it, and Megan would be in front of Ruth, facing out. And Ruth said, I have to figure out something different with Megan. And I'm thinking, okay, she's a very young child. Is there a problem, with young kids on planes? You know how it is. She goes, no, she's so effervescent and smiley. She goes, I can't get through the airport. Everybody's stopping us and wants to see this glowing light. Anyway, thanks, relatives and relatives.
So I am Carrie Wells, but Tucker, maiden name. My dad was the one who just spoke. I am Ruth's oldest niece. And if you know anything about the Tucker family, as my Aunt Alice said, there are a lot of boys, a lot of boy grandchildren, 5 boys before me, and I was the first granddaughter. I always remember because my Aunt Ruth was, working as a respiratory therapist, and my grandparents were living in Hayward at the time. And we would go see my grandparents a lot, and my Aunt Ruth would be there. And when the go-kart wouldn't work that my grandpa built, or the tree house needed to be fixed so that my grandmother could use the basket on the wire to give us doll peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, my Aunt Ruth, always lent a hand. And I owe her a lot because as the first daughter, granddaughter, niece, she was someone that I got to look up to because my other aunts lived pretty far away from us. So one of my only aunts was my Aunt Ruth on my dad's side. And the Tucker family is competitive. My Aunt Ruth, as you can see the Rumacube up there, loved games. She passed that competitive spirit on to me. She was the first woman that I saw go to college and graduate. And I thought to myself, that's the kind of woman I want to be. When I was in college, well, let me back up and say the other thing that she helped fulfill in my life was my dream of being in a wedding. I got to be her flower girl in a gunny sack dress when I was 10. And if you know anything about the 80s, you know that was like all the rage. She even got us gloves to wear, my sister and I. We still have that photo. And so, I always will remember that because that was one of the only weddings I was ever in before my sister got married, and I was her matron of honor. But, being a woman and having someone to look up to who is a strong woman means the world. And, um, you know, one of the stories I remember about my Aunt Ruth was actually at my grandfather's funeral when I was in college. And my grandmother had always worn her hair very short. She would set it in rollers and then put like the hair dryer on it and like sleep. But then as my grandfather got older, he wanted her to have long hair. We are a fairly religious family, so she grew her hair out long. And my grandfather passed away, and we went to Arizona where they were living at the time for the funeral. And my grandmother walked through the door, and her hair was short again. And we were sitting together. I said, "Grandma, like your hair is short." She had pierced her ears. And we were sitting next to each other, and she said, "And Ruth's taking me on a trip next week. She took me to get my ears pierced and my hair cut." And I was like, that was the grandma that I remembered. And like when my grandfather passed away, even though I was very close with my grandfather, I do credit my Aunt Ruth for just giving my grandmother a new lease on life in terms of living out the next 25 years of her life. She was very generous. She always took care of my grandmother. My grandmother lived with my parents for the last 10 years she was alive, but my Aunt Ruth was always there to care for her, and that meant the world. And my grandmother was actually supposed to pass away about a year after she moved in with my parents, but then the joke was that they took such good care of her with my Aunt Ruth that she lived another 10 years. So that meant a lot to us. But you know, uh, the other thing with my Aunt Ruth was that, when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I was diagnosed 3 weeks after her. And so, we both kind of shared that, even though that is not something amazing that you want to share. But we would email back and forth, and she would talk to me about her journey, and we would kind of compare notes, about our treatment, just because we were just kind of lockstep in that. And when her cancer came back, I was angry, just like Megan said. And my Aunt Ruth is not my mother, but I was angry because I was like, that's just not fair. But she was always so brave, and I know there were probably hard times, but during her treatment, but she was always so upbeat. I saw her about 2 months before she passed away, and she gave me a hug, and she said, like, it's not good, but I'm okay. And I thought to myself, geez, like, if my cancer comes back, like, am I going to be able to face that head on and so strong and say it's not good, but I'm okay, and live in joy? And when she met Cindy, my husband and I were just thrilled for them as a couple, and attending their wedding and just getting to spend time with them around the table and share memories and a good glass of wine. And she was always so proud of Brendan and Megan, and just everything that they brought to her life as children. We're not Jewish, but another kind of funny story was in college. I needed to take some religion classes. And I thought that classes in Judaism would be kind of amazing. And I actually took enough classes to convert. And I was joking around with my parents, and my Aunt Ruth happened to be there with Cindy that evening. And I was like, "Oh, I think I'm going to convert to Judaism." And my father, who's very accepting, looked at me and said, "Your grandfather's going to roll over in his grave, right?" And I was like, "I mean, but it's so cool, like the traditions and the culture." And he was like, "Well, okay." I didn't convert to Judaism, but one of the things in the Jewish tradition when someone passes away is they talk about, may the life the person lives be a blessing. And that's what they say to each other. And the history behind that is actually rooted in Proverbs 10, verse 7, which says, "The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. And really, according to Jewish tradition, individuals who live a good and honorable life, their stories will live on. Their memory lives on through the stories that people tell about them. And I know that just having all of you here today, that is definitely true for my Aunt Ruth. And we definitely appreciate you all being here.
Anyone else like to come up and speak? You want to come up? Someone was pointing to you, so.
Well, as the oldest member of the Tucker family present here, I just wanted to say to you as a group how much I deeply appreciate your love and support and friendship for Ruth. Ruth was someone whose friends were very, very important to her. And as a child, she was precocious, I would say, but she hated strife. She was a peacemaker. She wanted people to get along. She wanted us to include her and like her. And I know that you are all very, very important to her. And I thank you again. I don't know what my brother shared. You know, old people have stresses that young people don't. I'll hear later. But just a few things. She was very precocious. She was willing to try things even as a young child. I remember she always ate with her buttered bread with the butter down. And if she was able, she would scoop it directly from the butter dish into her mouth. I think that might be why her brain developed. You know, the human brain is, everyone knows, human brain is mostly cholesterol. And so that's an advantage we didn't have, you know, the rest of us. So my biggest contribution to her life as a young child was we were attending well, first of all, she loved to sit on my ankle, and when I was sitting, I'd cross my legs and bounce her. And I remember bouncing her until I thought my leg was going to fall off, and she kept wanting to keep going. My other job was we were going to a Baptist church all through her grade school. And so my job, after I got my little suit on and tie, was to sit with a brush. And Ruth was all dressed, but I had to divide her hair and brush it around my fingers to make Shirley Temple curls. So I spent many, not always happy, but I really generally enjoyed it. Sundays doing that, Sunday mornings. That trip to California, it could have been the end of Ruth's life. We went over Donner Pass with a 36 horsepower Volkswagen with 6 kids in it, pulling a 700 pound trailer. And so it was a very slow trip over the pass. And at one point, the engine just looked like it was going to conk out. And my father pulled over, went back to check on it. And if you don't know about, a Volkswagen bus had a door in the back over the engine that swung out, and it had a little push button and a lever. And Ruth was sleeping in the back, and this was for several hours, pulling this huge hill. And the door, someone hadn't clicked it shut. So the door was swinging about 6 inches open, and the floor was absolutely level. And Ruth slept through all that. Behind her was a trailer. If she'd rolled out, she would have hit the tongue and gone under the trailer. So Ruth's life almost ended near the beginning. But God had his hand on her at that time. We really enjoyed her life with us, the 2 years she spent as an adult and young adult. And she loved going to basketball games, as you well know. But she began to take our children. And so little Dan was like 2 years old. I don't know if anyone shared this. But she got him to the game. And of course, she was the idol of all her friends, having this cute little boy with her. And but the game got going and it was really exciting. And all of a sudden, Dan said, "Auntie Puff, mer juice." And she said, "What do you want?" "Mer juice." And so she got him everything she could think of. She got drinks, she got this, she got that. And finally, he started crying. He was mer juice. And so she showed back up at her house. She left the game right at the most exciting time, brought him home, and walked in the door saying, "What does mer juice mean?" And Alice said, he was thirsty, he needed water. Everything was juice to him. So we do have some images of her shot putting's career when she was 13. And I think I'll stop there. I have more I could share, but oh, sure.
Let me say how delightful it has been to hear all the family stories of Ruth. And I just want to share a story of how her life rippled out. My name is Robin, and I'm sitting among many girls here, or I should say ladies, that belong to the Legs Society. That stands for Ladies, I belong, Elks Ladies Golf Society. So Ruth and Cindy were very much a part of this group. And when I first met Ruth, I just fell in love with her. And I didn't want to call her Ruth. I wanted to call her Ruthie. So I asked permission and she allowed me to call her Ruthie. It was just a warm connection that I felt with her. So when I honor people, I like to do an acrostic, which is qualities using the letters of their name. So here is my tribute to Ruthie and our love for her. The R, real devotion to all that she loved. U, understanding. T, thoughtful, tender-hearted. H, happy, humorous. I, inspiring, interesting, and interested in others, a very special part of her. The E, she embraced life. And so today we are embracing her. So the E is for everyone loves Ruthie.
I have lots of good stories I'd love to tell about Aunt Ruth. Going to games with her, riding around in her bug, sitting in the swing she made for Grandpa. But the biggest memory is getting to go live with her when I was struggling to figure out how to be an adult. And she just trusted me to be a part of her life. She let me take care of you as kids. Just let me work and taught me so much about programming and building things and just gave me the confidence to become an adult. I've always been grateful for her. She's my favorite person. I'm glad she found you. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone to share, but let's please keep telling the stories of Ruthie, or Puff. There will be refreshments after the service in the social hall across there. The family would love for you to join with them. There's also little cards you can write. You can write messages to them. And